Hey, how's it going, guys? Ancient Rune here, back with another Once Human build video, and today I'll be going over my Kumawink build. This is a top-tier mobbing gun taking advantage of bounce that also works very well in single-target bossing if there are other enemies around, as well as strategies to get this just working in single-target in general. If I'm not running Hazardous Object, then I'm using Kumawink to clear enemies fast. I would not recommend this build for monolith bosses, but you could definitely brute force it. I don't have too much experience in those bosses just because I just prefer this in mobbing and I'll just use other builds for bossing, but it is something to keep in mind. This version is focused on staying at high HP instead of the low HP meta, as it's something I don't enjoy and like being able to take some hits. So with that, you will see my overall DPS being lower than others, but still more than viable to clear content easily. But despite that, I will still mention options for low HP with lunar mods and other stuff, as well as being able to take advantage of downstar mods and the related starfall inversion tech. I also want you to keep in mind the damage I am showing is not peak from my build, as I am still farming for even better rolls for everything, but the base build itself works amazing so you can hit even better results than me. Now let's get into it. Now what this gun does is it has a 25% chance to trigger an AoE bounce, hitting up to 3 targets. Bounce always triggers a rebound on hit, dealing 100% of the bounce damage, but no further bounces occur after the rebound. And then after reloading, bounce trigger count is increased by 1 for 6 seconds. Effect is removed after switching weapons. And then we also just get a flat bounce damage boost of 75%. Now, what bounce is an effect that will do a ricochet to a random enemy within 15-meter radius, and then bounce again. Each bounce damage deals damage equal to 40% of the weapon damage. If no target is available, then the bounce will go to the environment. This effect is non-elemental. The additional damage can crit, strike weak spots, and will decay with distance. And then you have the formula of bounce damage factor times the bounce final damage bonus. So with this, we'll mainly be looking for crit damage as we focus this, as it doesn't hit weak spots as much. And then we also have weapon damage and bounce damage available to us, and of course crit rate. Now, this is normally where I go over the calibration, but I will go over that later when I go over the key gear, because there's some stuff that ties in with it together. So just look for that for the calibration. But for the accessories, we have the muzzle, we have the assault brake, as this gives a lot of accuracy compared to what everything else can give, and it's just -1 range. Then we have combat reflex sight for the increased stability. We got that elite vertical grip for the increased accuracy and stability. There's stuff that gives more accuracy or more stability, but I really like that this is a mix of the two, so I prefer this. And then the magazine is the weighted SMG mag. This gives increased magazine capacity, but unfortunately less stability. Then for the ammo, we go the smart SMG ammo, as this gives increased attack after triggering bounce. And then you also have the stuff like Phantasmal, Suppression, Penetration, and Peregrine as options as well. And just the regular Tungsten if you want to. And then for the secondary, first off, we have the Recurve Crossbow. When hitting a weak spot, this will inflict bullseye on the target, as well as cause all weapons to have increased crit rate by 15% versus target with bullseye. So this increased crit rate is huge, and the go-to if there's an open weak spot. Then you also have the bingo. After switching weapons, the first hit will trigger bullseye. This is the main reason to use it. If there's no open weak spot, then I would go with the bingo. And this has a 70% chance to trigger bullseye upon hitting a weak spot. So this still is good for weak spots, but because of the switching weapons thing, so what you could do is hold your main gun, swap to the bingo, shoot, and that will apply bullseye here no matter what. And then you swap to your main gun, and then you just go ham. It also has increased weak spot damage if you want that. You only get 50% because the stacks are halved when you swap weapons. Then you also have the option of Wildfire. Just has a 60% chance to trigger a bullseye. So if there's no weak spots and you don't have the bingo, then the Wildfire is good to go. And then what is bullseye? Well, bullseye is a debuff that will highlight marked enemies and will be outlined and suffer from vulnerability, which is an 8% damage boost for 12 seconds. Then for the melee weapon, we go the Kukri. This is not something you can get as a blueprint, only drops from end-game content, so you'll want to look out for that. And then defeating a target grants all weapons increased attack and crit rate. This is the main thing. You don't have to worry about the PSI intensity on this build. And how we keep this up is going to be with the sticky ice crystal. What you will do is you will throw it out, hold your weapon, and then hold down the melee button and get that kill. And how you will get that is going to be from the ice spot deviation, which can be gotten from the endless stream or way of winter scenario. As you can see, I've got some being made here. And now for the deviations, both of these will give weapon damage, but they have different situations. First off, we have the Lone Wolf. This is going to be your main thing. First thing it does is it draws aggro, which is really nice, so you get hit less. Then also, when it hits an enemy, it will also give you increased weapon damage for that target, which is really good. So you got that aggro draw and then hitting an enemy. But if Lone Wolf can't hit that enemy, then you have the Zap Cam, which will gain increased weapon damage and will just go in your back and apply a debuff kind of thing that is that weapon damage. So pretty simple. If Lone Wolf can hit an enemy, you go that. If it can't, then you go the Zap Cam. Now, before we get into the gear and the calibrations, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you have enjoyed and want to see more Once Human content, and consider becoming a member to support the channel as well as getting videos early. So with the key gear, first we're going to have the sharp blade pants, as this will double our bounce count. So this will just increase our bounce hitting up to 3 targets, and then it will just double all that. As well as at the bottom, it'll have that bounce trigger count as well. So you just get so many bounces from this. It's nuts. So this is just the overall go-to damage. If there's enemies around, to get those bounces going. And with that, you'll have the calibration heavy style with the crit rate. This magazine capacity is really nice to have a good and consistent bonus on that trigger count at the bottom. So that magazine size is really wanted. And then you'll have the double crit rate down there. But if there are no enemies around, then you can go the tattoo pants. Bounce can hit allies but deal no damage and have a 70% chance to automatically refill bullets. Now what counts as allies is going to be yourself as well as your deviation that's out. And then also like turrets and stuff that you have out will also count. So that is also really nice if you wanted to. I don't do it on this build, but you can. And then with that, you will want to use a different Kumawink with the assault style, which gives increased attack. You get decreased mag capacity and decreased accuracy, but that attack is worth it. And you can give up that mag size capacity because of the ammo refill with the tattoo pants. It ends up being similar with the other stuff with heavy style. So you could go one or the other with Kumawink, or you could just go 2 different ones like I do, just because I have the resources to do so. Since I only use this for mobbing stuff, I never really had a problem with killing enemies in silos, where I've just had sharp blade pants and Kumawink. There's specific times where I think Tattoo could do it a little bit better, but I don't want to switch between the two, so I don't actually use the tattoo pants too much, but I wanted to state it for people who do want to use this gun more and don't want to do like multiple different builds. Then for the gear set, I like to go 3-piece Lone Wolf and 2-piece Savior. For Lone Wolves, we are doing it for the crit rate, but then also the 3-piece will give us increased crit damage. And so this is really good. This will give up to 48% crit damage. And then the Savior Cop will give us medicine cooldown, which is the main reason I go ahead. But it also gives a weapon damage increase by 10% when your HP is above 70%. So since this is mainly a high HP build, this is really good to go. I also messed with going Bastille for that easy weapon damage here, but it was not better compared to the stacking Lone Wolf that you got here. Even though we have a lot more crit damage usually in builds than weapon damage, just the large amount of crit damage made it better than this. Now, if you're going the low HP version, you have the option of Treacherous at 2-piece or 3-piece, 3-piece being the highest damage and the lowest HP, which will give up to 50% weapon damage at 3-piece. And then with that, you'll want to go the 2-piece Lone Wolf, as you still want that 5% crit rate. You could also go something weird like 2-piece Treacherous, 2 or 3-piece Lone Wolf, or go to 2-piece, and then like 1-piece Renegade for reload speed if you wanted to. It just really depends on what you want to go for. And then the mask hide you'll want to look for is, well, what I do is the golden wool, just because it works for a lot of builds that I have, so it means less gear I'm carrying, but it also is just consistent weapon damage, well, kind of consistent. It fluctuates between the weapon damage and status damage of a total of 12% every second. Now, if you want to do other stuff, you have the option of Cowhide with the weapon damage, with I think the best one being the Starfall Cowhide, with weapon damage 8% when stamina is above 120 or higher. And this is doubled while airborne, so 16% weapon damage, which is generally better, but it's just harder to keep, especially if you're moving around. This is a mobbing build and you're usually dashing a lot. You're not keeping up that high stamina. Now for the mods. First we'll go over the passives though, and for your weapon and mask, you're going to be going Bounce, as Bounce is just a big damage boost that you can easily get. And then you want to go with the Bounce crit damage, so just even better crit damage. Bounce trigger chance, doesn't really matter here. We are getting so many bounces. And then you want to look out for normal, elite, or great ones. Since I don't use this on monoliths, I would look out for the normal and elites. Overall, mainly the elites, because the normal enemies are usually pretty good. And elites don't have too much HP to where this damage is usually fine. You don't have to swap to like a bossing gun like you do with monolith. So just probably elites focus and then normal secondary. But if you're swapping after you kill, like get through mobbing, then you can just focus normal ones here. Then if going high HP with the helmet and the chest, you have the Lunar with the crit damage and weapon damage here, getting a lot higher compared to other stuff. And then you will have the normal, elite, or great ones. Then with the pants and the boots, you can go Downstar, as this will give increased crit damage and weapon damage based off of how high above an enemy you are. Now this also just gives flat damage here, which is the same as the Violent. So this is just better to go in general because it just ends up being possible more damage. But if you have a really good Violent mod, then just stick with that. And then again, we are looking for the elite, normal, or great ones. And then if you're using Downstar or any Starfall inversion stuff, you are going to make sure you have the gravity neutralizer, as this will make you stop in mid-air. What you'll do is you will activate it and then jump once or jump twice. Let me activate this double jump here. Then you can jump twice, and then you can either hold jump, you can aim over your shoulder, or you can aim down sights and you are still on the air. So it's just really easy to keep up. Then for the gloves, or if you just don't use any of the special stuff, we have Violent, which will give increased crit damage, and they're going to look for the weapon damage, and then normal, elites, or great ones. For the gun mod, we are looking at multi-bounce. The more bounces, the higher the damage, up to 45%, 77.5% per bounce. And this is bouncing like crazy, so this is easy to get going and keeping up. Then with the secondary, with our bullseye weapons, we have Vulnerability Amplifier, which gains increased vulnerability. So instead of 8%, it'll be 16% damage boost. And then with the melee weapon, you don't really have to have anything here. I just have increased melee damage to make sure I kill that cube that I throw. But there's really nothing you can put here. Then for the helmet, I like to go momentum up for increased fire rate for the first 50% of magazine, and then weapon damage for the next 50% of the magazine. You also have some other options like Weapon Symphony. After switching weapons, 10% fire rate, 25% weapon damage. This effect decreases over time up to a maximum of 60%. So that is something to take into account if you do want to go this. As well as Fateful Strike, getting increased crit damage and crit rate, but you just deal no weak spot damage. You can still hit weak spots. It's just like if you would look in your weak spot bar, it would just say 0% here. For the mask, we go Precision Bounce. After triggering bounce 6 times, the next bullet's bounce damage is 125%. Very easy to keep up, so definitely want to have this since we have so many bounce killings for always getting that damage boost. Now, the mod I have on here isn't actually what you want. It's just I have good passes on it, and I'm going to be working for something better. You don't want quick comeback like other builds because this will refill your magazine, and then you are not reloading for that extra bounce trigger count. So you will just be dealing less damage. So what you're really going to be looking for is maybe if you go high HP like me, you'll have rejuvenating, a kill restores HP, or you could go with like Ardent Shield, which gains increased damage reduction when you have a shield active. So those are just a couple options for you. There's a lot of different stuff you could use. Then for the pants, we are going Deadshot as we gain increased crit damage when we deal crit hits, and this effect is removed upon reload. Not even quick comeback can negate this. Then for the gloves, we go Crit Boost as this gives increased crit rate by 15%. We could also go Crit Amplifier, 5% less crit rate for increased crit damage, but it's so easy to get crit damage versus crit rate that I go that 5% extra crit rate here. Then for the boots, I go Covered Advance. After taking no damage for 4 seconds, gain increased weapon damage for 30 seconds. During those 4 seconds, if you take damage, it'll reset. But if you take damage during that 30 seconds, it will not reset. So it's really, really easy to keep up. You also have the option of Rush Hour for that low HP setup if you're going all the way down low HP for up to 28% weapon damage, which is more than Covered Advance. But if you just have a good Covered Advance versus Rush Hour and going low HP, it's fine just going the better passive Covered Advance. All right, and now for the Cradle. First off, we have Anti-Phase, which will give increased damage to SMGs, as well as increased damage against phase enemies. Then I go Aerial Suppression. We have a 30% damage reduction while airborne. Then we have Rapid Aid, which gives medicine cooldown rate so we can heal more often. Then we have Tactical Combo for increased weapon damage after reloading or switching weapons. Then we have Deviant Energy Defense, which will give us a shield, which will also give damage reduction. Then we have Tactical Leap, which will give us increased damage against deviants and just any enemies. So that is just easy damage to have there. And then you just need to be airborne to stack it, but you don't need to be airborne to get this effect, which is really nice. Then we have Deadly Combo as we gain increased bounce damage after triggering bounce. Then we have Bounce Rampage after triggering bounce, gain increased bounce damage up to 5 stacks. You could also go Marked Strike if you wanted to. I don't, because I'd rather get this damage reduction and not hitting weak spots as much as other guns, so I don't really focus on that, but this still is an option, and it would be still more damage than just going aerial suppression. Then for the food, first off, we have the Mixed Fried Hot Dog, where we have the increased damage towards enemies being bullseye, and this is against X enemies, so this is good damage boost. Normally I'd mention bone and deviated sausage, but I mainly use this for mobbing, so I never really use this. If you want to brute force monoliths, then this will be good against bosses, but I wouldn't recommend it. You do have some other options like Stargazy Pie, gain increased crit damage when your energy is full. And then you have Crumbly Bread, which increases your weapon damage by 25%. And then for the drink, there really isn't anything that helps us besides Stardust Energy Drink, as we will be able to take advantage of Downstart more, so we'll be able to double jump. All right, and now for the playstyle. Now, I don't have all my buffs active. You normally would want to make sure you do. I do have the double jump active, but nothing else with food buffs. So you'll want to make sure you also have your gravity neutralizer active if you have that, and then also activate your deviant. And then you'll want to throw down your sticky ice crystal and then melee that. Do your bullseye, double jump, and then get shooting. Then we'll do the second magazine as well for the more bounce. And you'll see we're easily hitting over 100k here, which is really dumb with not all the buffs going on. So I really like this for when I do Nightmare, the rare times I do it. I hope you guys enjoyed the build video. If you have any questions or suggestions for improvements, make sure to comment down below. If I don't feel like going a hazardous object, then Kumawink is my go-to. It's such a fun mobbing gun and such easy high damage. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more Once Human content, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.